What should I do? I have been asking myself this question for several months now, and I feel like I need some feedback. To summarize, I had both a physical and emotional affair that ended 8 months ago on D-Day. My husband and I have been together for 25 years, and there has never been any infidelity on either side. We are trying to move forward. I have shown much remorse for my actions and have given up all my freedom, passwords, etc. I thought this would be enough for him to trust me again. But I still feel guilty when I leave the house to visit friends or go grocery shopping. It seems to trigger his suspicion of my activities. I know he is struggling to get past the fact that I was unfaithful, as he was my one and only. It seems to be blocking him in some way. So what else can I do to help our marriage recover? I really want to feel emotionally connected to him, but it seems like we are both holding back due to our fears. The only area that has significantly improved is our physical intimacy. The hysterical bonding is over, but it is more about satisfying our needs rather than being romantic. I am aware of his triggers because I used to lie about where I was going. So I know I need to work on reassuring him and being transparent about my whereabouts. He also wants me to go out and have a good time. We tried marriage counseling, but he lashed out at me during the sessions and the therapist took my side, which was not helpful. The other therapist focused on the possibility of my husband having ADHD, but we stopped going. Recently, I suggested that we focus on our needs rather than the affair, as we have talked about it extensively. However, my husband does not want to go to counseling now, as he feels like he has to fix things since he messed them up. I know we need to spend more time together, but we are so busy with our 2 young children and adult child that we forget about ourselves. I understand that our physical intimacy has changed and our emotional bonding is not the same as before. It is not bad, but it feels different. Being in my 40s and experiencing another lover has awakened something in me that I am exploring, but that is a topic for another time. As for our relationship, it has not been negative. My husband has never mentioned feeling like the other man was a cloud hanging over our bedroom. He is enjoying the new me, but I know I have been selfish. I agree with that completely. I have not considered what I need to do for him to feel secure and loved in our relationship. I have been trying to move on from the affair quickly, but I realize I need to slow down and address any issues that arise, and triggers that may come up. I miss the old version of my husband. I want to see him smile and laugh and be a great dad without worrying that he has to spend all his time with me to meet my needs. It makes sense. Communication was never a problem within our marriage, except for the 8 months prior to my affair. Unfortunately, we are both social workers and we used to really talk about what we needed from each other. So what happened? Well, obviously it was my issues, a midlife crisis. I was unhappy with my job. I wanted more for myself and my family. I had 2 young children later in life and felt overwhelmed with what it entailed sometimes. Something I am currently working on, although I should go back to counseling. Every time I go, the same issues keep coming up about my parents, in terms of my mother's physical handicap. Then there are issues around my father divorcing my mom while she was pregnant with my sister. Lots of stuff, but I really feel I have dealt with those issues, and the real issue that led to my affair was within myself and my lack of self-fulfillment. But who knows? Sorry for rambling on. On a good note, my husband and I have a date tonight, something we used to do a lot of when we were dating, having a couple of drinks and playing a few games of pool. Let's hope I beat him tonight. We are pretty competitive. No doubt there are other issues that led to the affair. There was also the aspect of someone else desiring me and giving me the compliments I so needed at that time. I didn't want to hear them only from my husband. It wasn't enough. I know it's going to be a tough and long road ahead of us. Initially, yes, I just wanted it to go away. I was sweeping it under the rug. But I now know that I cannot do that. And the real work starts here. The aftermath seems to be much worse than D-Day. I don't completely understand my husband's pain, but I see how it has affected him personally and professionally. Sometimes I wish I could grab a magic wand and make his pain vanish. I want to make our 25-year marriage work, and realize that I have to show him my remorse through actions, as has been said on the board over and over again. I need to show him that he can one day trust me and not feel disgusted with my behavior. He once was totally devoted, and I have destroyed that. I have to live with that for the rest of my life. For what? An ego boost? Obviously not worth it. I believe that I would never put myself in a situation where I become so vulnerable that I would enter an affair again. Maybe I am wrong, but I feel that I can protect myself and my marriage by seeing the warning signs within myself and dealing with those issues and sharing them with my husband. I guess what I meant was that the bond in our marriage has improved 100%. And in saying that, I felt that we had moved forward in that area. I guess I thought that if the bond was great, then everything else would fall into place. Was I wrong? Is it a trade-off? I can't look at it that way. That's pretty selfish thinking, really. My husband found out about the affair through my emails to the other man. He always had access to everything I had. I always left my cell phone around. He had such blind trust in me. If only he had looked at my phone, he would have seen it all right in front of him. The affair was short, only 3 months. It was with one of the people who were renovating our home. Although I take complete responsibility for saying yes, he pursued me with all the famous lines. Everything I wanted to hear at the time. As my husband points out, I was still, to a point, very naive. It used to drive him crazy how I never saw a bad situation coming, or that people were manipulating me. On the other hand, it's what he loved about me so much. While in the affair and deep in the fog, I truly believed I was much happier than I had ever been. I was completely caught off guard by my mixed emotions and overwhelming guilt. I asked him to leave, which he did. He regrets not reading the 180. We did not fight after he left. He had full access to the kids. I did not ask him for a dime. I genuinely thought that if I wanted this, I could do it alone. Then Valentine's Day came, and I felt sick to my stomach over the pain I saw in his eyes. We talked and decided to make it work. I ended the affair on that day and never contacted the other person, although the other man tried his best to manipulate me into continuing to see him on the side. I gave my husband the other man's address, and he drove to his house and sat outside while on the phone with me. I tried to calm him down, but he was in a rage. He walked up to the house and threw something the other man had left at our house while working here. It was not a good situation. The other man was so paranoid that he wouldn't come out of his house and cowardly phoned my husband to apologize for the whole thing. Did my husband feel better with the apology? Maybe for about 5 minutes. He had so many plans of how to ruin this guy's life. He would come up with ways that would scare the crap out of me. In the end, he walked away. I felt like I owed it to my marriage and my children to reconcile with my husband. I didn't want to work on my marriage just for my kids, but as a family, he's a great father, no matter if we were together or not. I wouldn't want them to see us in a miserable marriage. My family is aware of the affair except for my kids, whom he didn't tell. I told them myself. Did they play any role in my decision to return to my marriage? Not at all. They knew it wasn't a perfect marriage. During the affair, I really didn't think much of anything. Just fed my selfish behavior. Did I think long term? Sometimes, other times I was confused. Before the affair, I had a lot of resentment towards my husband. Yes, that's true. I didn't hate him, though. He had a serious neck injury 15 years prior and required surgeries and physical therapy to overcome it. During this time, I felt like I was in the caretaker role while my own needs were not being met. Again, that wasn't the reason I had the affair, but it may have made it easier. Funny thing, when we first got together, there was no hysterical bonding initially. I think in the first few weeks he had so much rage and pain that he didn't seem to crave that need to bond. After several weeks, when the rage subsided, he did experience the hysterical bonding. We both knew what it was, as we had already done some research. I think you're right, it won't last. But knowing that element in our recovery, we can identify it if and when it becomes an issue and still have a healthy bonding life. Our oldest son, who is 21, came to me one morning crying and devastated to learn that his girlfriend of 2 years had cheated on him. I truly felt his pain, and it crushed me inside to know that I couldn't protect him from such heartbreak. I also didn't advise him to end the relationship, but asked him what he wanted to do, and helped him reflect on whether it was a relationship worth salvaging. In the end, he did end it, and that was his choice. But yes, it was hard seeing him suffer in such pain for a long time as my son. My interaction with the other man was not purely physical. Of course, there were emotional aspects as well. He said everything I wanted to hear at the time, things I felt I wasn't getting from my husband. Did I get tired of him and drop him just like that? No. I pulled away from him while my husband and I were separated. He knew I was going back to my marriage. I just realized that it wouldn't have lasted with my guilt towards my husband and the pain I saw in his eyes when he would pick up our kids for the weekend. I knew that I would have to be alone for a while before starting a new relationship. Did it work out that way? No, hubby and I are far too soon where we should have worked on some issues first. We both wanted to get our family back together, probably too soon. The incident with my son was 2 years prior to my affair. All my friends and family know of my affair. I had no say in the matter and did not fight it. Friends and family will forgive easier than marriage partners. Comments. The biggest problem you have standing in the way of recovery is that you cannot truly empathize with your BH. You can never feel the pain that your affair caused. I believe that the more a WS can understand the level of the destruction they caused, the better the chance at reconciliation. You talk about being the genuine you. The truth is that the kind of pain you dished out fundamentally changes the nature of the one hurt. I have never cried a day in my adult life, but when I discovered my WW's affair, I cried like a baby for days. If you ever get close to understanding the hurt you caused, you may be able to humble yourself, and it just might break some of your pride. I would guess that this is what your BH is looking for. I do think that you are genuine in your desire to recover your marriage. But the heavy work falls on you. You have to do everything in your power to help your BH recover from the trauma you have caused. Until that happens, it doesn't matter what was missing in your marriage that left you vulnerable to lowering your boundaries and having an affair. Try to show him every day in every way possible that you are committed to doing everything in your power to establish and enforce personal boundaries to prevent this from ever happening again. Also, let him grieve and just be there to help him. Don't make excuses and let him know that his feelings are valid. The best thing you could ever say to him when he is angry or hurt is that you understand that this is all your fault and that he has every right to feel what he's feeling. OP responds, there's an element of my relationship with my husband that I have not shared that I never wanted to share as it would cloud my initial question. But I had a trigger today and thought I should come forward with this detail. 20 years ago, during the time when we were dating, 3 years I think, my husband had 2 ONS. He told me before I found out, and something I never thought about until my own affair. We rug swept it and I stuffed my pain, but this morning, I thought about ways to show I'm really remorseful. And something came to me from 20 years ago that really stuck out in my mind. I don't remember much. I remember as he told me he was sobbing, sitting on the floor, begging me to forgive him. We cried together and seemed to move on from it. I think I get it, that I haven't truly shown the remorse I should have. I don't think my decision to have an affair had anything to do with his choices 20 years ago. But, on the other hand, maybe I thought it would just all go away as quickly as it did back then. The other man was married, and yeah, we've been struggling over the fact that his wife needs to know that he's a cheat, although she had suspicions. I guess I hesitated because I'm a coward and don't want the backlash from it. Hubby is at me full force with showing up at his door and letting his wife know what a scumbag her husband is. About a month later, I feel like the karma truck has hit me. Well, I guess it has for me. My husband is a great man to have put up with the bullcrap I've thrown at him during my affair 9 months ago. I recently found out that my 6-year-old daughter is having a lot of difficulty academically. She seems to have problems focusing in class, and her report card was fair, with a lot of improvement needed. I feel like it's all my fault this is happening to her. If I hadn't made mistakes in the past, this wouldn't be happening. If only I had been a better mother and wife. What's worse is that I have little to no control. just as my husband had none during my affair. This really sucks. Anyway, I just needed a place to put this, karma at its best. We don't know exactly what the problem is. I gave the teacher permission to have her tested so that I can help her the best I can. I have also hired a tutor to help her with the basics. If she doesn't grasp the basics, she'll only fall further behind. I really think that the affair has contributed to her difficulties. Yes, I am a good mother, but no, I was not at my best during the affair. And even during our reconciliation, I know I neglected her needs because I was so messed up. During our reconciliation, my husband and I were so focused on our problems that, again, the kids seemed to come second. It's time to focus on my kids and help them heal from my own selfish mistakes. How do we get back to living a normal life? It's been 9 months now, and I feel that while working on our marriage, we have focused all our energy on the devastation it has caused our marriage. I read so many posts that say that couples are still having family life, dinners together, all while not bringing up the issues or something to that effect. It's like this is always hanging over our heads, setbacks or not. Yes, we spend as much family time as we can, but the dark cloud never seems to leave our lives. Sometime later, I got a call from my previous employer to do a shift tonight. For those of you who don't know, I cheated on my husband and used to text while doing an overnight shift, with clients all sleeping. I also lied about going to work and met up with another man. My husband knows this, of course. This is a trigger for my husband, and so we talked about it before the holidays, and both decided it would be okay for me to pick up a few shifts here and there, given the fact that we need the money. So they called this morning and my husband took the call, which was good, in that he knows it's legit. Since I had lied on 2 occasions that I was going to work and met up with another man during the affair, he did not want to put a GPS in my car and justified it with the idea that if I'm going to cheat again, I'll find a way to do it anyway. But I think he is starting to trust me as well. I guess what I didn't expect is that I would be triggered big time myself. Just walking into the building is making me nervous, like all the crap is going to come back. I'm totally over the other man. It's not about missing him, etc. Just the lies, cheating, gaslighting, and blame shifting I did during that time reminds me of what a piece of garbage I was to my husband. My husband says it might be a bit of PTSD, and I'm starting to think he's right. Anyway, that's where I am today. For me, it's not about temptation. I actually had brief conversations about this with a friend of mine. She said the same thing. I do have willpower. I'm not some weak woman looking for random guys. I don't mean to sound harsh, but I guess I'm a bit sensitive about that word. It just makes me seem like I don't have control over myself. I'm an open book now, no secrets. It's all about the boundaries I have to establish for myself. And I'm pretty clear about them, though I still have work to do in this area. My biggest problem with the opposite gender is that I have trouble distinguishing between friendly interactions and flirtation. My husband has always had to point this out to me. I am naturally outgoing and friendly, so I worry that my behavior may be misinterpreted. Perhaps I am naive, but I have never had many boyfriends before my husband and have never been in a serious relationship. When my husband and I first met, I never imagined that our marriage would become what it is now. It was never perfect, as we are very different in many ways. I tend to take things in stride, which can drive him crazy, while he tends to overanalyze things. But our initial attraction 25 years ago was because we were so different, and over time we seemed to complement each other. However, as the years went by, we drifted apart. I would say about 8 months before my affair, things were at their worst. When we had our 2 younger children, things only got worse. We were older and did not anticipate how much energy they would require. The lowest point was when we stopped sleeping together months before my affair. I was 43 years old, my youngest child was 3, and I had no desire for intimacy. I ignored this issue while my husband continued to push for it, and it only drove us further apart. I was traumatized by a difficult C-section, and a nurse had to come to our home every day to treat my open wound while my husband was at work. I resented the fact that he chose to continue working while I was alone with a baby and a 2-year-old. Looking back, I realized that after not working for years due to a neck injury, He felt that working was the only way he could feel good about himself and provide for our family. I understand that now. At the time, I thought he didn't care about me at all. I never thought anything would change, and we even went to marriage counseling, but it only turned into a blame game, so we gave up on that too. It was a terrible time. Then my affair happened. What surprised me the most was that I never thought I would be happy in my marriage again. Even after we decided to reconcile, I thought my husband would resent me and continue to show his hatred towards me. I felt like our marriage was doomed. But then I found a website that helped me deal with my obsessive feelings for the other man. It was helpful in that respect. And when I found this forum, I spent a long time reading, but finally finding the courage to post. I'm so glad I did. I started to feel hopeful and let go of my justifications, denial, and selfish thinking. I began to see things from my husband's perspective, and it changed everything. I started to feel the love I once had for him, something I never thought was possible. I can honestly say that I am now happy in my marriage again. Even though some days are hard, we are still able to laugh and have fun, which is crucial in any marriage. I know I may seem all over the place, but my emotions can be too. I think the next hurdle we need to overcome is how we handle conflicts. My husband tends to blame me for things that go wrong, while I tend to avoid conflict and hope it will resolve itself. We both agree that one of the issues in our marriage is that I was only 18 when we met, and I had no serious relationships before him. I was a very naive and shy girl. I overcame my shyness, he helped with his outgoing personality, and basically grew up. He finally admitted that at times he still sees me as the meek and mild girl I once was, and therefore treats me accordingly. I think it's hard for him to see that I am a confident, outgoing person now, and deep down he wishes I was still her, and this is one of the reasons the affair hurt him so much. He just couldn't believe that this little shy and meek girl could do this, added with the level of deceit that was involved, and when I would continue to lie to him, he couldn't understand what had happened to me. I no longer lie to him. Even stranger is that I cannot even do it. I would feel so guilty. It's a trigger for me now, and there is nothing to lie about. Everything about me is in the open, now. I'm honest about my feelings, completely. He said something interesting last night. He said that the affair has not made our marriage better, but the fact that we are communicating more has. Last week was probably the most difficult week since D-Day. My husband was triggering horribly. We're not sure what exactly started it. He says I was pulling away, which could be true. I know he's still insecure as a result of my affair. I don't get mad if he calls me 10 times during the day, or sends endless texts, and then worries if I don't answer right away. But he senses a little frustration, I think. It can feel smothering at times, and I just need time to myself. He's afraid to leave me alone because of his own fear of what could happen. He has this need to get into my head and know what I'm thinking. This mostly happens when triggers are in full force. So he feels me pulling away from him, and he immediately comes to the conclusion that I must be in contact with another man and planning to move in with him, since his wife, apparently, will be kicking him out this month. Knowing this is a trigger for him, the whole month will be hell for him. I think, no matter what I say to him, he cannot calm down and think rationally. I understand his fears and try to reassure him. He listened to every word I said, and then would pick out certain things that he felt were questionable. He then searched my phone, asked if I had deleted messages, which I didn't. I only delete when my phone is full, and he's pretty much the only person I text with. He then finds nothing, heads to the computer, checks email, and as a last resort comes to my journals, which he reads sometimes. He's looking for something I may have shared about meeting another man. He then reads the one about bonding that I wasn't comfortable writing about. He already knew about it, but it didn't help reading it. He flipped out and basically said a lot of hurtful things, mostly stuff that I had done, but with the added little dig. All the while, I am trying to be patient and listen, knowing he was triggering, knowing that it wouldn't last. It came to a head that night when he said he phoned about an apartment. I was shocked and asked him if that was what he wanted, that we've come this far, and now give up. We talked, and I told him that I did not want him to leave. I loved him, and reminded him that I am sorry for what I did, that it will never happen again, and that it made me sick to see him this way. He finally broke down and cried, and we both did. We got a lot out, and Sunday was much better. I'm not scared to upset him. I actually lost my temper on set and just yelled, "Leave me alone." It's hard though. I'll tell him exactly where I'm going. Respond that I don't have to go into details like that. But then other times he needs them. I can't win. I don't feel obligated to sleep with him. I want to feel close to him. On the other hand, I feel guilty if I reject him. I feel like I rejected him so much during the affair. And with him moving out, there have been times where I have not been in the mood and have said it in a way that he wouldn't feel unwanted. You know, that feeling of being discarded is hurtful. Comments? Here's the way I see it, and I don't want to sound too harsh. But first, your husband will never be able to fully get through this until he is ready. He can talk to his counselor every day about everything that triggers his emotions. But until he is able to forgive, never forget, the cause of the infidelity needs to always be remembered so as not to go back to the place that led to the event. If he is willing to let things go and move on, it will never work out with the two of you still being together. I don't say this as an excuse, but I have been there, and I am still trying to recover. We are 16 months out from D-Day, and there are days that my husband, who had the affair, can do everything I ask and everything he should be doing, but I still get overwhelmed and have random thoughts and feelings. Sometimes it even takes a few days for me to get through it. However, here's where I think some things need to be taken into consideration. Just because you have dealt with your issues and seem to be okay with what you have done, doesn't mean he is. Remember, you have had more time to deal with your choices from the day you decided to go outside of the marriage. Your husband, on the other hand, has only had time since D-Day. You have worked through many emotions already, and he still has many to go through. Things will either get better, and you two will end up in a happy marriage, or, and this might be hard to deal with, he may not be able to forgive you for what happened, and you two might go your separate ways. This all lies on your shoulders. But the one choice he didn't make, and he had no control of, was to have his wife step outside of the marriage. Sometimes, very drastic measures must be taken, and if your affair actually happened in the home you share, it might make sense to leave the home. It won't be a quick decision, but taking the steps to get this going may be necessary. And just know you may be doing everything he needs and asks you to do. But there are going to be days, sometimes several at a time, that his emotions are out of control, and you just need to love him through them. OP responds, "I'm not okay with what I've done. I was in a lot of denial at the beginning, not realizing the gravity of the destruction I have caused. I am guilt-ridden and ashamed of what I have done. There are good days and bad days, like you say, and I agree. I'm not sure separation is the answer, though. I think I'm just finally breaking down, as though everything is really sinking in now. I'm big on stuffing my emotions. I don't want to bother anyone. This is a big problem, and then it all comes to a head and I end up cracking. The last couple of days have been hard for my husband, and I feel sick that he's worried about me like this. He's anxious and calling every half hour, worried that I'm going to do something. I keep reassuring him that I'm not, that things have just sunk in. And the pain of what has happened to us just overwhelms me at times. We're both very sensitive people, and we both know when each of us is not happy. We not only feel it, but we react to it. Last night I went out with a friend for coffee, and on the way I became disoriented just for a minute and got lost. It's just this weird feeling I have. One minute I'm feeling flat, the next I just burst into tears. The other thing is, I started a stop smoking medication last week, and I'm wondering if I'm feeling the side effects. One other man called weeks ago. He said his wife was throwing him out after Christmas. He also said he was getting an apartment in January. So yeah, this is bothering my husband. He still believes to some extent that I will go back to him, although he says it's only 10%. It's enough to trigger him, though. We also have to go to court sometime in the future and sue him for the work he never finished in our basement. My husband is afraid he might harm him. My husband will be going to court and sending a registered letter stating what will occur and that he is to not have any contact with me, only my husband. He never responded in order to make arrangements for payment. I paid someone to finish some of the work. He will be a witness, full steam ahead. He has told me that sometimes he gets angry because he wants me to feel his pain, but also wants to make sure that I won't forget, so I don't cheat on him again. I guess it makes sense. I've told him that because of the consequences I would never do this again, and I mean it. The problem is that all it takes is one time. And yeah, he'll always have reminders of what happened. It's the working through them that we have to focus on. I really am trying. I don't keep anything from him. He even reads my posts and knows I have a couple of people I PM with. It's all out there for him to see. He just loved me so much before. He protected me from any form of pain I received and supported every choice I made in the last 25 years. And to just give it up for a jerk, he can't understand. I think the main problem is that I have been very open with everything. My feelings, his feelings, and shared a lot of my life. I have always been an open person and will always answer questions truthfully. But people don't ask me questions. They assume what they feel must be true because, guess what, I cheated, lied, etc. It really never leaves a person's mind when reading my posts. My husband sees a very qualified therapist who has experience in PTSD and infidelity. The problem is that at this point, he does not want to let go of anything because then it will mean that I will forget too and will not work on the marriage. It also means that if he starts the process of moving on, it allows his heart to open up and be free to be hurt all over again. Update: my marriage is over. Apparently, infidelity is a deal breaker for my husband. My husband went to his sister's house yesterday and came home around 4 in the morning. This is the first time he has ever left, so willingly, so ready to move on if he needed to. I didn't beg or plead with him to stay. I was numb to it, really. After the kids went to bed, that's when I felt it. Is this really the end of 25 years? I tried to sleep in the bed but couldn't, so I just lay on the couch in the dark, just thinking about what I have done to him in the last year. I kept looking at the time, wondering when he was going to come home. I really missed him. Just his presence in the house is a comfort for me. It's like when he took me to my first concert, Billy Idol. We had crappy seats, and he said to me, "Grab my hand, we're going to the front row so you can see him up close." I was scared, but when he grabbed my hand, I felt safe. I trusted his word. I was so in love with him. I remember working at a summer camp, and we had to be apart for 2 months. I remember finding the biggest art paper I could find and filling it up with "I miss you," and just sharing every detail of my days away from him. I think I sent him letters almost every day, and then he drove 9 hours to spend one day with me. He missed me as well. I snuck him into my cabin. I didn't care if I got caught. We chilled all night and just talked. We had not even been completely intimate at that point. When we had our fights, it was just as intense. We would scream and say awful things to each other. We broke up for a few days when we were dating. He was devastated. I wouldn't take his calls and refused to talk to him. I sat at home depressed but stubborn as hell. I even forget what the fight was about. His mother finally called me and begged me to come see him. She was almost in tears. She told me she was worried about her son and that she had never seen him like this. He was drinking heavily and isolating in his bedroom. My heart sank. I thought he was going to harm himself. I begged my mom for the car. I didn't have a license and drove over to his house. What I saw I still see, even today, and how I ever forgot about that during my affair I'll never know. The way he was curled up in a ball on the sofa in his room, just sobbing. I held him for what seemed like forever. I didn't want to lose him either. I guess you really don't know how much you really love someone and actually want and need them until they are willing to walk away from it all. Even as kids, I realized at that point that because of my actions and the level of cruelty I subjected him to, he was willing to say goodbye. It had to be just as painful for him to leave, but it was too painful to continue the way we were. When we finally talked today, I was discouraged and lost. I wanted to tell him that I love him, that I missed him last night. But again, my pride got in the way. I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't plead with him to never leave my side again. We talked for hours, and without him yelling. We hadn't slept much in days. He was drained and fed up with the suffering of the last 9 or so months. I really didn't know what to say to make him see that I love him more than anything. So I brought up a trip we took to Memphis 6 years ago. He was just starting a new career as a social worker and had just landed his first job. He was so proud to have a job after studying for 3 years and being home on disability for so long. Unfortunately, it was a horrible job for him. A woman had it out for him the entire few months he was there. She was angry at a comment he made as a joke. She was an extreme feminist. He had no idea, and when he called her princess when she snubbed her nose at his coffee, she almost ruined his new career. He'd call me every day, almost in tears, pacing the parking lot. Finally, I said, quit that job. You need to get out of there. Years later, he crossed paths with her, and she tried it again, this time feeling more secure in another job. He went after her, and people finally saw who she really was. She lost all respect from her colleagues and almost lost her job. My husband always loved Elvis since he was a kid, and his dream was to visit Graceland. I had just inherited money. I told him that day we were leaving in 2 days for the road trip. The radio barely worked, but didn't bother us. We would cheer when we would get reception. I was so happy to see him smile again. It was all worth it. So, as I lay on the sofa, I thought of these memories that I haven't thought of in a very long time. Did I just forget them when I had my affair? Where was my mind when making the decision to cheat on my husband? I know at the time I wanted to be selfish. I wanted something for myself, but I'm still working on it. This is what I need to realize. That as intense as his anger is towards me, his love for me is just as intense. Before my affair, I didn't feel that he needed me. He was doing fine and was happy in his job. I needed to feel and see that he was devoted to our family, but in reality he was. My own issues with myself won over and led to my decision to abandon my marriage. Tonight, he was sitting at the kitchen table on his laptop, and all of a sudden, I heard my favorite Elvis song, Suspicious Minds. He had our daughter on his lap, and she was moving and grooving to Elvis. I laughed and grabbed my 4-year-old son and made him dance with me in the kitchen. The kids loved it, and for the first time in a long time, everyone seemed happy. So I finally told him that I wanted him to stay. We agreed that it's going to be a long road ahead of us. We talked about patience, which I don't always have, but I also have a need to fix things immediately. I have to learn how to feel my own pain over what I did and learn to live with it instead of expecting it to go away. That's where we're at today. Sorry if it's so long. I used to journal as a teen and have a whole suitcase full of loose papers and doodles. I remembered it helped me get through some of the craziness of adolescence. Maybe this can help me again. This is part 1 of a 2-part story. I need to sleep and finish up part 2. Part 2 will be released very soon. So, 7 Balan, I'll see you there.